Imagine a single traffic jam, but this one costs the global economy like $10 billion a day.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around that number.
Right. But back in 2021, when that massive cargo ship, the Ever Given, wedged itself sideways into the banks of the Suez Canal, it didn't just, break the physical supply chain.
Oh, absolutely not. It triggered one of the most complex legal nightmares in human history.
Exactly. And most of us, we never really think about the sheer amount of physical stuff we interact with every single day, right?
Mm.
Or how it actually got to us.
We just expect it to be there.
Yeah, I mean, the price of the gas you put in your car this morning,
Right.
or the availability of the specific smartphone you're literally holding in your hand right now, even the coffee beans for your morning brew,
Right. The logistics are totally invisible to the average person.
completely invisible. But today, we're doing a deep dive into the incredible, intricate legal machinery that actually powers that whole global conveyor belt.
And it is a fascinating machine.
It really is. We're looking at a source called Anchored in Law,
Hmm.
and our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this ancient, highly complex web of maritime law. Because, more than 80% of all world trade travels by sea.
80%.
Yeah. Yet the rules governing that massive ocean of trade operate completely out of sight.
It really is a hidden architecture. And, well, what's fascinating here is that long before the word globalization was ever even coined,
Oh, right.
yeah, long before we had the internet or commercial air travel, maritime law was essentially the world's first truly global system.
I guess it had to be, right?
It had to be. I mean, you simply cannot have a functioning, reliable system of international trade if the rules of engagement drastically change every single time a ship crosses some invisible, arbitrary line in the water.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the best way I can initially wrap my head around it is to think of maritime law as, like, the operating system of the global economy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's this dense code running silently in the background. But to understand it mechanically, a better way to look at it might actually be through the lens of real estate.
Real estate. Okay, how so?
Well, you essentially have two layers, right? You have the public international treaties, which act kind of like the zoning laws of a city.
Okay, right. Broad strokes.
Exactly. They dictate the broad, overarching rules of what you can and cannot do in certain areas. And then beneath that, you have the private contracts, which are, like the specific lease agreements between a landlord and a tenant.
That is actually a much more accurate framework for understanding the mechanics.
Really?
Yeah, and to see who originally wrote that zoning code, we have to look way back at the historical foundation.
Way back.
Very far back. When we say maritime law or admiralty law, we're talking about a framework governing, shipping, navigation, cargo handling, the rights of seafarers.
Environmental pollution too, right?
Yeah. Yes. Environmental pollution, maritime salvage, piracy. And the roots of this is wild, go all the way back to the Rhodian sea laws around 900 BC.
Wait, 900 BC is staggering?
It's ancient.
We're talking about rules originally written for, like, wooden galleys carrying olive oil and wine. And those are being used as the foundation for modern megaships carrying millions of flat-screen TVs and electric vehicles.
It's a foundational link, yeah. Though the logistical problem today is, well, it's much more fractured.
How do you mean?
Well, back in 900 BC, a single merchant often owned the ship, captained the actual voyage, and owned the cargo.
Oh, sure. A one-man show.
Exactly. But today, ownership is split across continents. Think about just a standard shipping route right now.
Okay.
A vessel might be owned by a company in Greece, but it might be registered and flying the flag of Panama.
Right.
Then it leaves a port in China, loads cargo that was manufactured by a dozen different multinational corporations, and is finally scheduled to deliver all those goods to the United States.
Right. So, I mean, whose laws actually apply when you're out in international waters, literally thousands of miles from any coastline?
That is the exact jurisdictional nightmare that international treaties try to solve.
Because everyone would just fight over it?
Right. If every nation forced its own domestic laws onto that one single voyage, the system would just paralyze itself with contradictions.
So they had to agree on something.
Yes. This sheer necessity for a shared global playbook gave rise to major international conventions.
Like the ones mentioned in the source.
Exactly. You have historical frameworks like the Hague-Visby Rules, and then modern, really comprehensive treaties like UNCOS, which is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
So those are zoning laws, going back to that analogy.
Yes, the zoning laws. They establish the broad rules, like how far a country's territorial waters actually extend, baseline environmental standards, and the universal duty to rescue vessels in distress.
Wait, hold on. I did push back on this for a second.
Sure.
Because our source material points out a massive paradox here.
Ah, yes, the private contracts.
Right. We have these giant international agreements, these universal playbooks like UNCLOS, but the text explicitly states that shipping companies still heavily rely on national legal systems for their private contracts.
They do.
You frequently see English law or Singapore law clauses written right into these global shipping agreements. Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of a global rule book?
It seems like it would, yeah.
Right, like if I have an international treaty, why am I suddenly agreeing to play by English rules?
I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but it actually provides the glue that holds all the daily operations together.
How?
Because international treaties are inherently broad. They have to be because they require dozens of different countries to compromise.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so a treaty might say a ship owner must use due diligence to make a ship seaworthy.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
But what does due diligence actually mean in practice? Right. Different national courts will interpret that broad treaty language in wildly different ways. A judge in France might have a very different standard for due diligence than, say, a judge in Brazil.
Ah, so the international rule says, be reasonable. But what reasonable means literally changes depending on whose courtroom you're standing in.
Exactly. And the one thing global commerce hates more than anything else is uncertainty.
They want a sure thing.
They need predictability. So to bridge the gap between those broad global treaties and daily business, companies write specific governing law clauses into their lease agreements, their private contracts.
And they usually pick English law.
Very often. English law, for historical reasons tied to the British Empire's naval dominance and the establishment of the Lloyd's of London insurance market, it's incredibly well developed for shipping.
So it's just been around the longest?
Basically, it has 300 years of hyper-specific legal precedent.
Wow. So it's not just a general preference. It's literally about having a massive library of past examples to point to.
Precisely. If a ship deviates from its route to avoid a storm, right, and it burns an extra $50,000 in fuel,
All right.
English law likely has 100 past cases detailing exactly who pays for that extra fuel under those specific circumstances.
That's incredibly specific.
It is. By choosing English law or Singapore law, the parties are essentially buying predictability. They're choosing a highly detailed lens through which to interpret the broad global rules.
Guaranteeing that if a dispute happens, everyone kind of already knows how a judge or an arbitrator will rule.
Exactly.
Okay, so if shipping companies are choosing English law for predictability, what exactly is that law interpreting?
But private contracts?
Right, because it has to be applied to a specific set of rules for that specific voyage. So how do they actually document that?
Well,
I mean, knowing the broad rules exist is one thing, but how do they get enforced on a ship-by-ship, cargo-by-cargo basis? Our source brings up two massive documents acting as the backbone of the industry.
yes, those would be the charter party and the bill of lading.
Right.
These two documents literally dictate the movement of virtually everything you consume. Let's start with the charter party, which is simply the contract for hiring a ship.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because you can think of charter party like leasing a vehicle, but just on a gargantuan scale.
That's a great way to look at it.
You can hire a ship for just one single voyage, like paying a taxi to
Ah.
take you from point A to point B.
Right.
Or you can hire it for a specific block of time, say 2 years. But the wild one is what they call a bareboat charter.
Ah, yes. The bareboat charter.
That is where the hirer takes over the ship entirely. It's like renting a car from Hertz, but they just hand you the keys to an empty metal shell.
And nothing else.
Right. You have to bring your own driver, hire your own mechanics, buy your own insurance, and pay for all the gas yourself.
That captures the mechanism perfectly. In a bareboat charter, the legal risk shifts almost entirely to the person renting the ship.
So you're on the hook.
You are effectively the owner for the duration of that contract. Now, the charter party deals exclusively with the vessel itself.
Just the metal box.
Right. But what about the millions of dollars of goods sitting inside that vessel?
The actual stuff we buy.
Exactly. That is where the second document comes in. The bill of lading.
I like to think of it as a cargo passport.
It does act like a passport, yeah, but legally speaking, its mechanics are much more complex than that. A bill of lading performs a triple function.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it's a basic receipt. It's just proof that the carrier actually received the cargo in good condition.
Makes sense.
Second, it is the evidence of the contract of carriage, outlining the terms of how those goods will actually be transported.
Okay. And the third?
Third, and this is the most important part, it acts as a document of title.
Meaning whoever physically holds that piece of paper literally owns the cargo.
Yes. And that is a vital mechanism for global trade.
Really? Just holding the paper.
Yeah. You can buy and sell a cargo of crude oil 5 different times while the ship is still physically floating in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
Just by endorsing and transferring the bill of lading, much like you would endorse a check.
That's wild.
It dictates what is shipped, who owns it, and the very specific rights and liabilities of the carrier versus the cargo owner.
And I guess you need all three of those functions defined perfectly because, well, the ocean is a deeply hostile environment.
Incredibly hostile. Things go wrong all the time.
Let's put you, the listener, in this scenario for a second. Let's say you're a buyer who just imported a shipping container absolutely packed with high-end electronics.
Okay, very expensive cargo.
Super expensive. Laptops, smartphones, tablets.
Hmm.
But the ship hits a massive storm in the Pacific. Water breaches the hull, and your entire container is ruined.
Total loss.
Right. When those doors open and seawater just pours out, millions of dollars are gone. Who pays for that?
That's the million-dollar question, literally.
Right. Was the shipping company at fault because they stowed the container poorly? Were you at fault because you didn't package the electronics adequately for a sea voyage? Or was the storm just an unavoidable act of God?
And the answer to who pays is never found by just pointing fingers on the dock.
Definitely not.
No, it is found by dissecting the exact mechanics of that bill of lading and the underlying contracts.
So the lawyers get involved.
Immediately. Specifically, lawyers will look at the Incoterms.
Incoterms, what are those?
These are the international commercial terms that literally pinpoint the exact geographic location or the exact moment in time where the liability transfers from the seller to the buyer.
Give me an example.
Okay. An Incoterm might state the risk transfers the moment the shipping container physically crosses the rail of the ship during loading.
Oh, wow. So if the crane drops the container onto the dock, the seller pays.
Correct.
But if the crane drops it onto the deck of the ship, the buyer pays. It is that precise.
It has to be that precise. Lawyers will also examine the force majeure clauses.
We hear that term a lot.
We do, but mechanically, it's a clause that frees both parties from liability when an extraordinary event occurs that is totally beyond their control.
Like an act of God.
Right, like a historically unprecedented hurricane. If the storm meets the legal definition of force majeure under that English law we mentioned earlier, the shipping company might be completely shielded from liability for your ruined laptops.
Wow. So it is entirely about assigning blame before a disaster ever even happens.
Exactly.
But we've talked about what happens when things get destroyed by dramatic weather, what happens when things just take too long. Because time is money. But at sea, time is ridiculous amounts of money.
Delays are actually the single biggest point of friction and litigation in global logistics.
Really? Not storms.
No. Weather makes the headlines, but waiting is what drains the bank accounts.
Okay, so imagine you've chartered a massive vessel to ship your company's grain from Argentina to China.
Okay.
The ship navigates perfectly, crosses the oceans without a hitch, and arrives at the destination port.
A successful voyage.
Mostly. But when it gets there, there is a massive backlog. The port is hopelessly congested.
That happens quite a bit.
Right. So this giant ship, which costs tens of thousands of dollars a day just to keep the crew fed, and the engine's idling drops anchor and sits there, waiting for days, maybe even weeks, to unload.
And this scenario introduces two of the most critical legal mechanisms in shipping: laytime and demurrage.
Okay, break those down for me.
Laytime is the specifically agreed-upon window of time written right into your charter party that the ship is allowed to take for loading or unloading the cargo.
Kind of like a grace period.
Exactly. Think of it as a grace period. Let's say you negotiated 4 days of laytime.
But the moment the clock ticks past midnight on that fourth day, you enter the dreaded territory of demurrage.
Yes. the late fee.
And we aren't talking about a $20 penalty at the library.
No, absolutely not. Demurrage functions as liquidated damages.
Liquidated damages.
Yeah.
Meaning,
In legal terms, that means it's a pre-agreed daily penalty rate designed to compensate the ship owner for the lost time so they don't have to go to court and mathematically prove their exact loss of profit later.
they just agree on a flat daily rate beforehand.
Right. And these liquidated damages can run into the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for every single day the vessel is delayed beyond its lay time.
Okay, so I have a question about the mechanics of this.
Go for it.
If a court is congested because of a sudden massive labor strike by the dock workers,
Okay.
which is something completely out of your control as the grain seller, and completely out of the control of the ship's captain who was just sitting there staring at the dock,
Yeah.
how do they decide who has to basically eat that massive demurrage fee?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is exactly why the modern global economy requires microscopic legal attention to risk allocation.
You have to plan for it.
You have to. You cannot wait until a wildcat strike happens in a foreign port to figure out who is liable. The charter party must meticulously spell out how these shared unforeseeable risks are assigned before the ship ever leaves Argentina.
Wait, so you literally negotiate a strike clause into the contract?
Yes. There are specific clauses that allocate risk for bad weather delays, for union strikes, for bureaucratic customs holdups.
So if it's in the contract?
If your contract explicitly states that the charterer, meaning you, the person who hired the ship, bears the risk of strikes, then the laytime clock just keeps ticking.
Ouch.
Yeah. You are paying that $100,000 a day demurrage fee, regardless of the fact that the strike wasn't your fault. You assumed the risk in the contract.
That's brutal. Millions of dollars are constantly hanging in the balance over the definition of a single word or a tiny clause in a contract.
They really are.
And when someone receives a bill for $3 million in demurrage, I imagine they're going to fight it.
Oh, they fight it tooth and nail.
They aren't taking this to a local traffic court, obviously.
No. Bringing a highly technical international maritime dispute into a standard national courtroom is a recipe for disaster.
Why is that?
Well, a local judge in a landlocked region might be brilliant, but they likely have absolutely no idea what the mechanical difference is between a bulk carrier and a roll-on, roll-off vessel.
Fair point.
Right. They don't understand how port congestion cascades through a global supply chain. Furthermore, just establishing jurisdiction over a Greek owner, a Panamanian vessel, and an American buyer in a local court is a total nightmare.
Which is why the vast majority of these contracts contain mandatory arbitration clauses.
That's right.
They bypass local courts entirely and take these colossal fights to international arbitration hubs. The source identifies 3 undisputed heavyweights in this arena: London, Singapore, and New York.
Yes. These 3 cities offer highly specialized legal infrastructure.
Because they've been doing it so long.
Exactly. When you go to arbitration in London, your dispute isn't heard by a random jury. It's heard by a panel of arbitrators who are often former sea captains, naval architects, or veteran maritime lawyers.
People who actually know the industry.
Right. They know it inside and out, which ensures the decisions are based on commercial reality, not just abstract legal theory.
And we really cannot overstate the real-world economic ripple effect that these arbitration hubs have to sort out.
It's massive.
Let's go back to the 2021 Ever Given incident in the Suez Canal. We all saw the photos of the little excavator trying to dig out the bow of that massive ship.
Oh, yeah. The memes were everywhere.
Right. But from a legal perspective, the true nightmare wasn't just the Ever Given itself.
That's the crucial mechanism people miss. The legal domino effect was staggering.
Because it blocked everything else.
Right. When that ship was stuck, hundreds of other vessels were trapped behind it.
Exactly. Their cargo was literally rotting in containers. Factories in Europe had to shut down assembly lines because their microchips were sitting idle in the Red Sea.
It impacted everything.
And those trapped ships were missing their laytime windows at their final destination ports, triggering a massive global cascade of demurrage claims.
A total mess.
Companies everywhere were suddenly invoking force majeure clauses, trying to get out of contracts they could no longer fulfill.
Yeah.
It triggered worldwide legal and financial chaos that arbitrators in London and Singapore will likely be untangling for a decade.
It's true. The Ever Given really demonstrated how heavily reliant we are on physical choke points and how dependent the economy is on legal mechanisms to sort out the financial mess when those choke points fail.
Absolutely.
But what's equally compelling is how this legal framework is actively trying to anticipate dictate the future of failure.
The modern frontier of maritime law.
Yes.
Because we aren't just dealing with bigger ships and tighter canals anymore. The industry is facing massive technological and environmental shifts.
Right. Like, for instance, they're actively trying to digitize the bill of lading.
The cargo passport.
Exactly. They want to replace that physical document of title, that literal piece of paper that gets couriered around the world, with blockchain-based electronic systems to prevent fraud and speed up the transfer of ownership.
But I imagine that comes with its own set of problems.
It does. Digitization solves one problem but introduces another: cyber risk.
Oh, right. Hackers.
Yeah. What happens mechanically and legally when state-sponsored hackers take control of a vessel's navigation system and purposely run it aground?
It's terrifying.
And then there are the environmental mandates. The International Maritime Organization has strict decarbonization goals now.
Which affects the contracts, right?
Directly. This means modern shipping contracts now have to include complex clauses about who pays for the installation of alternative fuel systems and who is legally liable if a ship fails to meet its carbon emission targets during a voyage.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
I mean, it seems like maritime law is living in this wild paradox.
it really is.
On one hand, it's an ancient system, deeply rooted in traditions that date back to 900 BC, dealing with the same fundamental problems of wind, water, and human error.
The elements haven't changed.
Right. But simultaneously, it's desperately trying to write the rules to govern futuristic technology like blockchain smart contracts and autonomous unmanned vessels navigating the oceans.
It's a system of continuous evolution. It has to constantly look backward to legal precedent to maintain stability and predictability, while simultaneously looking forward to technological disruption to ensure its own survival.
And that brings us right back to you, listening to this deep dive.
Exactly.
The next time you walk into a grocery store, or unbox a new piece of electronics, or even just check the tracking number on a package online, remember the invisible architecture it took to get it there.
It's easy to take for granted.
It really is. The sea may look calm and empty from the shore, but beneath the surface is a high-stakes web of human decisions, specialized arbitration hubs in London and Singapore, and ancient rules of risk and reward.
It's all connected.
That invisible operating system dictates exactly what you pay and when you get it.
This raises an important question, though, for all of us as consumers.
What's that?
It reminds us that the law is not just a reactive force, merely punishing mistakes after a ship crashes. This hidden legal framework is actively shaping the future of global sustainability.
Oh, definitely.
The contracts being written today dictate how fast we transition to cleaner energy and define the very structure of international trade for the next century. Understanding how these hidden systems operate is, well, it's essential if we want to comprehend the direction the world is actually heading.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something to keep your curiosity anchored as you navigate your day.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the maritime industry is, in fact, rapidly moving toward fully autonomous vessels and blockchain-based automated smart contracts,
Which it is.
what exactly happens when an AI-driven ship encounters a purely digital routing error, drops anchor in the wrong zone, and accidentally causes $10 million in demurrage?
That is a great question.
You can't put a computer algorithm on the witness stand at an arbitration hub in London. Who takes the blame when the operating system of the global economy literally becomes an autonomous operating system?
Something to think about.
Keep that in mind next time you see a cargo ship on the horizon. Until next time, thanks for diving deep with us.